Hey, what's going on, guys? Rome Gaming here. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention some of my socials in the description of the video. If you want to support the channel, please check those out. If you want to support the channel in other ways, please consider just dropping a like or a nice comment somewhere on the video. It really helps the algorithm push our content out there to a broader audience. With that being said, hope you guys enjoy the episode. Hey, what's going on, guys? Rome Gaming here, back into the video. Today's episode, we're going to take a quick look at what I think some of the easiest healers are going to be going into War Within. Now, this is not going to be a power ranking in any sort of way. This is just the specs or the classes that I feel are going to be the easiest to pick up from a rotational standpoint on both damage and healing. So again, going to be kind of more geared towards beginner healers, people just kind of dipping their feet into healing for the first time, or for people maybe thinking about changing their mains going into War Within. So this is all just going to be my opinion here. And again, this is not a power ranking. So the way that the rankings are going to go in this is S tier is going to be easiest, A being the tier below that, and then C and D tier being the two hardest. So let's go ahead and start the list out here with Restoration Shaman. Maybe putting Restoration Shaman in the A tier. Now, the reason I'm not putting it into S tier is because there is a lot of button bloat with this specialization. And the main reason for that is because we have a lot of totems that we play around with Restoration Shaman. And there's pretty much a totem for any sort of situation that you could face as Resto Shaman. So looking at Restoration Shaman, there are 9 different totems that you can use. So if you look at my keybinds down here at the bottom, every single keybind that I have is filled up with a spell. And if I go into my spellbook here, there's actually a bunch of other spells that aren't even on my bars at the moment. Now, I do think that this will be one of the more straightforward healers, though, mainly because you just have those 3 or 4 core spells that you kind of rotate around. So we got our Riptide, we got Healing Surge, Healing Wave, and Chain Heal. That right there is the bulk of your healing. Of course, there's tons of other cooldowns. You also have your Healing Stream Totem, but for the most part, you just have those 3 or 4 spells that you're really focusing on. I also put this into the A category because this is also one of the specializations that you don't have to do damage to heal. You know, we look at something like a Disciplined Priest or a Mistweaver Monk where you have to kind of know your damage profile to be able to heal your group, and you have to be able to trust your damage. As Resto Shaman, if you just want to send the healing, you can do that. Not saying your mana is going to necessarily keep up with it, but if you just want to pump out healing, you have the ability to do that. And then I think we also have a great mastery. So the less health that your party has, the more healing your spells do. It's really good to help catch up on healing if you do get behind. And the final reason I'm going to put them in the A category is because they have some of the most powerful healing cooldowns in the game. So between our Ascendants now going down to a 2-minute cooldown through talents, it's showing 3 on my screen because I don't have the talent right now, and then also getting the rework to our Spirit Link totem to give that burst heal, we just have such a strong toolkit to be able to get that healing when we need it. Okay, now let's talk about Restoration Druid. So I'm personally going to be putting Restoration Druid in the C tier. I do think that this is one of the more difficult healers to learn. And one of the main reasons I think this is due to our spell Efflorescence here. So we have a ton of healing that is kind of baked into Efflorescence that's not necessarily obvious. If we go to our talents here, you can see that we have our Spring Blossoms that come from it, which also affects our mastery. And then we also have our Verdancy spell here. So when our Life Bloom blooms, people that are standing in our Efflorescence are healed. Just to show you guys, if you're not familiar with what Efflorescence is, it's this green circle here. So the problem with this is it requires your allies to position based on your spells. So if people aren't standing in that green Efflorescence, you take a massive, massive hit to your healing. And when you're playing with a whole bunch of ranged characters, it can be very difficult, especially for a beginner healer. You're trying to manage all your hots, you're trying to do damage, you're trying to keep everybody alive, and now you have this green circle that you got to worry about, and you got to try to position it around your allies. It can also be a little bit difficult on bosses like first boss in Necrotic Wake, where you're kind of hiding the mobs around the room, and you're just constantly having to refresh and recast the spell. Another reason I put this into C tier is because you also have the feral form. So a lot of your damage when you shift into cat form, a lot of your damage will come from shifting in and out of different forms. So you got bear form, you got cat form, and then you have your normal form, all with their own unique abilities. So this is kind of, in my opinion, the juggling specialization. You're switching in and out of forms. You're trying to do a whole bunch of different things at once. and I do think it is a bit of a mentally taxing specialization to play. We also have other spells like our Life Bloom spell, which actually does different things based on the target that it's on. So if we go down here to photosynthesis, while your Life Bloom is on yourself, your periodic heals 10% faster, or when it's on an ally, your periodic heals on them have a 4% chance to cause it to bloom. So again, you have to know which hots that you're putting on which target and why you're putting that hot on that specific target. And the final reason we're going to talk about here is this is more of a proactive healer, and you have to kind of know where the damage is going to come so you can ramp your healing so that you can get the most throughput out of your healing spells when you need it. Now in Season 1 of War Within, we are seeing a very bursty damage profile, and I do think this kind of goes against Restoration Druid a bit. Hots are really good when there's sort of slow ticking damage out on your whole group. Hots can just pretty much counter that, but when there's a lot of burst damage and you have to funnel a bunch of heal over time effects into one target, it takes a minute to get going. Now we did see large buffs to our regrowth spell, which is like our main single target healing spell, so that does kind of offset this a bit. But again, with Restoration Druid, I am having issues keeping people alive more than other specializations, at least at the moment. Now on the plus side of Resto Druid is when you do get those hots out, you do a lot of healing. They probably have one of the highest healing throughputs in the game once you get maximum hots out, and if everybody's standing in your efflorescence, you can really pump out a ton of healing. All right, next up on the list, it looks like it is Mistweaver Monk. So I'm going to be putting them in A tier right next to Resto Shaman. Now, back in the day before I understood how Mistweaver Monk worked, I would have put this in C or D tier. But once I kind of dove into the class tree and understood how things kind of synergize with one another, this is a very passive healer. So Mistweaver Monk kind of has two different specializations within it. There's the Castweaver and then there's the Fistweaver. I'm going to talk about Fistweaver specifically. I don't think Castweaver is much of a thing really outside of PvP. It could be a thing in Raid 2. I don't raid much. But for the most part, we see Fistweaving in Mythic Plus. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So one of the things I love about Mistweaver Monk is all of the passive healing that goes out just by you doing damage. You quite literally throw out your Jadefire Stomp and then you just start doing damage and pop Renewing Mist on your allies. And for the most part, that is your healing rotation. Now, of course, you do have cooldowns. You do have very powerful cooldowns that you can utilize when there's a ton of burst damage going out. But for the most part, you throw out Jadefire Stomp, do the damage rotation, and things just get passively healed. And this is really nice in Mythic Plus because the more damage that you do, the more healing that you do. Therefore, when you pull very large packs and there's a lot of damage going out, you're doing more damage, therefore more healing. So this can scale very high. Now, one of the main reasons I love Mistweaver Monk is due to this spell right here, Life Cocoon. You can see it's on a 1.3 minute cooldown due to this talent here, which reduces the cooldown Life Cocoon by 45 seconds. And this spell is such a lifesaver. You put a massive shield on the target, and it also increases all healing over time received by 50%. So this is really great, and the damage profile that we're seeing at the moment with all that burst damage coming out, somebody can get nearly one shot, you throw a Life Cocoon on them, and they're totally fine. They'll be healed up through your passive damage. Another reason I love this spec is because of our Mastery Gust of Mist. So Renewing Mist, Enveloping Mist, Rising Sun Kick, all these spells listed here cause a Gust of Mist, instantly healing the primary target for 54,000. So this is just yet another very passive thing that happens as you do damage, as you do healing. These Gust of Mist go out and they further heal your group. Now, Mistweaver Monk is one of the specializations that is played in a very specific way. So you really kind of have to dive deep into the talents, unfortunately, to understand the best way to get maximum throughput. For example, 2 Tiger Palms before a Blackout Kick. That's one of the things that aren't super obvious. But once you kind of connect all the dots, I do think that this is one of the easier healers to play, assuming that you do have a decent understanding of their talent tree. So not a lot to manage, really. A lot of passive healing, a lot of passive damage. One of my favorite healers. All right, next let's talk about Holy Priest. So Holy Priest for me is going to go into the S tier. I think it's the best beginner healer to pick up. I think it's the most straightforward from a damage perspective and a healing perspective. Now, one of the reasons this does go above Restoration Shaman, they're both very similar into the way that they play, which is why they're both high in the tier list. But the reason it's slightly above is due to not having to play around totems. So totems can be a little bit weird for beginner healers because you got to kind of place them on the ground. They have a certain range that they affect. You have to stay by the totem to get that effect. With Holy Priest, you don't have any of that. You just have straight healing, straight damage. Now let's start with the damage profile here first. So we have this spell here called Burning Vehemence. So Holy Fire deals 75% of its initial damage to all nearby enemies within 12 yards of your target. So this will turn your Holy Fire spell into an AoE spell. And we also have another talent above it, Imperial Blaze. Holy Word Chastise causes your next 2 casts of Holy Fire to be instant, cost no mana, and incur no cooldown. So basically, these 2 spells are your damage rotation in terms of like AoE trash packs. So what you'll do is you'll Holy Fire into a Chastise, into 2 more Holy Fires. And you can see I just did 1,000,000 burst damage. So the reason that is so strong is because you can get it out so quickly. It's so straightforward, and you almost just can't mess it up. Just make sure you're Holy Firing before you Chastise into the next 2 instant cast Holy Fires. I also think, I could be wrong on this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in terms of overall damage, Holy Priest does more damage than something like a Discipline Priest, which heals through doing damage. Now, it might not on single target encounters like bosses or raid fights, but overall in a Mythic Plus dungeon, I think that Holy Priest probably does the most damage of all the healers within just a couple of button presses. So from my beta testing, Holy Priest is absolutely pumping right now, just in a couple of globals. Now, I also think Holy Priest is going to be really strong because they really focus on single target burst healing through Holy Word Serenity, Flash Heal, and your normal heal. So we have a spell here called Lightweaver. Flash Heal reduces the cast time of your next heal within 20 seconds by 30%, stacks up to 2 times. So typically what you do is you Flash Heal twice, then you just do your normal healing spell twice, and you can kind of go back and forth. And as you cast Flash Heal, you get charges of your normal heal. Now your healing rotation can pretty much be summed up into 3 buttons here. Not really, I'm not saying that Holy Priest is a 3-button healing rotation, but the vast majority of your healing is going to be these 3 buttons here. So as Holy Priest, we play around these things called Holy Words. So let me just bring it up here just to show you really quick. Holy Word Serenity. So this is going to be your single target heal. As you cast Heal and Flash Heal, the cooldown of this spell is reduced by 6 seconds. You get 2 charges of that. And then we also have the opportunity, if we want, to be an AoE healer through our Holy Word Sanctify. So you are going to use this spell some in Mythic Plus, but for the most part, we're not as worried about this spell as we are Holy Word Serenity, because this is your main single target heal. So just to briefly gloss over the rotation, right? So watch my heal charges here. You see I have 0 charges. So as I cast Flash Heal twice, 1, 2. Now I have 2 charges of heal, 1, 2. They both of those charges had the reduced cast time on it. And basically you're just going back and forth between those 2 spells. And then let me drop some Serenity charges here. So you can see the cooldown on it. As I'm Flash Healing, watch the cooldown on it. You can see how quickly it drops. And these Serenity charges are so strong, they're almost like a lay on hands if you're familiar with Holy Paladin. Now, not quite that strong, but extremely strong. Pretty much going to be taking people from 50% to 100%. So of course you have other things to worry about, but the core of Holy Priest is just so simple. It's so straightforward. It's so user-friendly with these instant cast Serenities. It's one of those specializations that can be kind of hard to mess up. All right, now let's quickly talk about Holy Paladin. I'm going to put Holy Paladin in the B tier, right in the middle of the pack. I think this is going to be a great healer in War Within, mainly due to its high single target burst healing. Now, you guys have heard me say that a lot throughout my previous videos, this bursty damage profile. It is really no joke, and you really want high single target burst healing to offset that. So Holy Paladin is a great contender for this. So the hardest part about Holy Paladin is how quickly it plays. You have a lot of buttons that you're pressing. You're using every single global. There's not much casting in there at all. Everything's pretty much instant cast, and you are hopping in between NPC nameplates and your friendly nameplates, and your mouse is just kind of all over the place as you're spamming buttons. So the way Holy Paladin works is you have this holy power system. You generate holy power and you spend that on spenders, which are just basically more powerful healing spells. So the whole point of the specialization is to be generating as much of this holy power as you possibly can. So what makes Holy Paladin a little bit more difficult to me than something like a Mistweaver Monk is you do damage and you generate holy power, and then you have to spend it. Unlike something like a Mistweaver Monk, you just do damage and it just flat out heals. It's very passive. But with something like a Holy Paladin, you're having to generate something, and then you're going to have to figure out who to spend it on. So it's like an extra step kind of built in. Now, just to briefly go over Holy Paladin, kind of summarize how it plays. I have a macro here, and what this macro does is it will go through my Judgment, Crusader Strike, and Consecration. It just puts it all into one button here so that I have less button bloat on my screen. So really, it's like 5 abilities here that we're looking at, but the way that I have it set up, it's 3. Now, that's probably not the most optimal way to do things, but that's just how I do it personally, and I've healed some pretty high keys using this method. So kind of what you're looking to do is you're looking to Holy Shock, trying to get rid of those Holy Shock charges. You see a max Holy Power. I'll use an Eternal Flame. And then I'm just going through 1 and 2 until I get to max Holy Power. I'll Eternal Flame, going through 1 and 2. Eternal Flame, and it's really just these 3 buttons for the most part. There's other stuff you got to do, obviously, in cooldowns, but for the most part, we're just going through these couple of buttons here. And it's one of the specializations that looks very simple. You know, it's like, oh, it's just 3 or 4 buttons. What's so hard about that? Why is this in B tier? But it happens so fast, and there's just so much going on, and your mouse is moving all over the place. It's such high pace that, you know, it's not for everybody, and it can be kind of difficult to pull off. So very high APM, you have to be very efficient with how you use your globals, because you're going to need every single one of them. And you know, if you do get behind on Holy Paladin and you don't have any cooldowns up, it can be a little bit difficult to catch up those health bars. But really good specialization, especially right now in this bursty meta that we're seeing. Holy Paladin can kind of counteract that with all their burst single target healing. Okay, up next we have Discipline Priest. I'm going to be putting Discipline Priest right below Restoration Druid in the C tier. And Discipline Priest is another healing specialization that has been a little bit more difficult for me than these other ones up here. And the reason Disc Priest is hard is because you have to kind of trust your damage. So the way Disc Priest works is you heal through doing damage, but only if you have a buff up called Atonement. So let's take a quick look at this. Basically, this is a buff that can be applied through these various spells here. And you can see in the middle, your spell damage heals all targets affected by Atonement for 35% of the damage done. Now, this is increased to 70% for us because we're in Mythic Plus dungeons, and we're not in a raid, right? We're just in a party. So we will get 70% healing through our damage through this Atonement buff in Mythic Plus dungeons. And the main way that we really apply this is going to be through Powered Radiance. You see it's a cast time, and you see it's kind of ticking down 8 seconds, right? Now the cooldown on Powered Radiance is 15 seconds, but Atonement only lasts for 8 seconds. So this is kind of what makes Disc Priest a little hard in its current iteration. Basically, as a Discipline Priest, if that Atonement buff is down, you're not doing very much healing. If that's down and your Powered Radiance is both on cooldown, you're going to have to revert to Flash Heals and Power Word Shields, and those aren't as strong as a Disc Priest as they are as a Holy Priest. Now, one thing that I do love about Discipline Priest is the button bloat on it. You see, I don't have a lot of spells really. You know, your core sort of rotation is in these 4 or 5 spells here, and that's where most of your healing and damage comes from. So we talked about Atonement. We talked about some of the issues with it in its current iteration. You know, Atonement only lasts 8 seconds, but the thing that applies it's on a 15-second cooldown. So that's not super good. That's something that's a little bit difficult to manage. So you have to kind of be a little bit proactive. You have to kind of know when to use it and when not to use it. Another thing that Disc Priest has to worry about is a lot of their healing and damage comes through this pet that we send out. So this is your Mindbender. It's over here on the right-hand side of the talent tree. And it has been replaced due to hero talents. It's called Void Wraith. It's the same thing, basically. It just changes how it interacts a little bit. But a lot of your burst healing and damage comes through this pet that you send out. So the whole point of Disc Priest is to get as much uptime on this pet as we possibly can. So you can see it's on a 1-minute cooldown. But if we cast Smite, if you watch the cooldown on it, it goes down. I think it goes down by a couple seconds per smite. So you want to be smiting and you want to be doing a whole bunch of damage to get more CDR on this pet, which does more damage, which does more healing. Now, Discipline Priest is kind of a mix a little bit between Mistweaver Monk and Holy Paladin. So you got the high APM from Holy Paladin. It's not quite as high APM. And then you also have the effect from Mistweaver Monk where if you're not doing damage, then you're not doing healing. But on top of that, you also have the added effect of that atonement that we talked about, which is just kind of difficult to manage, especially, timing it correctly with boss mechanics. It's just a lot to kind of keep track of. Now, I will say one more thing about this discipline specialization. We can go the Oracle tree, and I'm not going to go deep into it, but in the Oracle tree, you could take all these different talents here along with our premonition, and we can get a lot of CDR on our powered radiance. And you can actually keep uptime on your atonement for about 2 to 3 minutes straight due to all the talents here. And then we have a few other talents in the discipline tree. I think it's through Bright Pupil here. So through premonition, through some of these other spells over here on the right hand side of the tree, through Bright Pupil, you can keep your atonement up for several minutes at a time. It's actually almost a non-issue. But the problem is Void Weaver just has so much throughput right now than Oracle, especially on that burst healing when you really need it, when you're pulling a really big pack and you just need a lot of raw healing. Unfortunately, we're not getting that from Oracle, so a lot of people are running a Void Weaver at the moment. And Void Weaver, again, has the issue of not being able to keep atonement up constantly. So, if they do fix the atonement issues, just kind of going back to our tree here, or to our list, I think Disc Priest could move above Restoration Druid if the atonement issues do get fixed out. I might could even make it up here into B tier, but both trees just kind of each have their own unique issues at the moment. Okay, so now for our final healer here. So this is going to be Preservation Evoker. And to me, Preservation Evoker is going down into the D tier for beginner healers on learning how to heal. So the way Preservation Evoker works is it kind of works off a combo system. Now, once you get the hang of Preservation Evoker, I don't necessarily think it's a D tier healer. I think it's probably sitting into B to C somewhere. But it is very confusing to wrap your head around, especially if you're just trying out healing for the first time, because it's truly unique and there is no other healer like it on this list. It's kind of in a class of its own. So going back to the combo system sort of deal, we do work off these essence charges. So we have mana and essence, and we can spend this essence on specific spells. So you do have to be a little bit mindful of what you're spending these charges on, because if you use them all up, they're gone and they have to recharge. So you can't just spam random buttons. You have to kind of know what you're pressing before you press it. Now we also have a spell called Echo. And basically what this will do is anybody I put Echo on will also get that heal again as a duplicate effect. So if I put 3 Echoes out on 3 targets, and then I cast a single target healing spell on another target, those other 3 targets all get that single target heal effect. So this is kind of where that combo system comes in, because just about any heal that you have in your kit can be duplicated again. Now we do have other ways that we can apply this. So we also have a spell here. Let me open up the spell book again. We have something called Temporal Anomaly. And this is this orb that you throw out. Anybody it hits will get Echo put on them. So, this is something that you're going to be casting very frequently. And the whole sort of specialization works around Echo. Now we also have a spell here called Reversion. I apologize. I think it's cut off on the top of the screen. Just know it's called Reversion. And basically what this does is on a short recharge timer, and this will revert any of the damage that a target's taken. So 15% of that damage you've taken will be rehealed, and it also puts a heal over time effect on that target. Now, a lot of the times what you can do is you can echo your reversion, because that heal over time effect, it gets duplicated twice. So what a lot of people do is they will echo, and they will basically just kind of mass spam reversions. Now, I'm not saying that's how to play it or anything like that. I'm very new to Preservation Evoker, and I've not hit Keystone Hero or Master on it yet. It's something I'm going to do this season, and we're within in Season 1. But from what I've played and from what I've heard, typically you want to spend a lot of echo charges on this reversion spell. Now, the reason I talk about this is because echo is such a core part of our healing kit, and how you use it will have a big impact on your healing throughput. Another reason I think that this is one of the more difficult healers is because a lot of cooldowns are kind of based on damage that you're taking at the given moment. So you see here we have something called Renewing Blaze. Here we go, got it on the screen now. So Flames of Life surround you for 8 seconds. While this effect is active, 100% of the damage you take is healed back over 8 seconds. So this isn't just a button that you press and it heals you. You have to press it while you're taking damage. We also have spells here like Rewind on a 4-minute cooldown. You rewind 30% of the damage taken in the last 5 seconds. So this is another one of those spells that you don't just press it and it heals. You have to use it within 5 seconds. Now, the other spell I want to talk about was Stasis. And basically the way this works is you can store some of your healing into the Stasis, and then you can release the Stasis within 30 seconds and just release all those 3 spells that you stored all at once for a bunch of burst healing. So this is another one that's kind of hard to play around, right? Because you only get that 30-second window, and you kind of have to know the damage that's coming to be able to use the spell. Now, we also have some other spells that are kind of on a recharge timer. So just for example, we have Dream Breath, and the way this works is you can charge it up. When you get to max charges, that's more burst healing, versus where if you do it at the lowest charge, that's a higher heal over time effect, but less burst healing. So we have that in the form of a heal. We also have it in Fire Breath, right? The lowest charge will do a higher dot. The highest charge will do higher burst. Now, on the flip side of this, they do have probably one of the easiest damage rotations outside of something like a Holy Priest. You do just have a couple of buttons that you're kind of rotating outside of your Fire Breath, Living Flame. We do also have like a Disintegrate and a Deep Breath, but outside of that, not a lot going on in terms of damage. This is also probably one of the strongest healers at the moment in the beta from both a damage standpoint as well as a healing standpoint. So I don't necessarily want to scare you away from playing the specialization, but you will have to get comfortable with some of those combos. So again, I don't think it's necessarily that hard to play Preservation Evoker once you get the combos down, once you understand the spec, kind of what you're supposed to be using Echo with. But it's just not very straightforward until you do some research on the spec and kind of do a deep dive into the talents. It's played again on a combo-based system, and if you don't do those combos in a very specific way, you will feel it on the meters from a damage and healing standpoint. Okay, guys, that's gonna be the end of this video. Again, this is just my opinion. Again, this is not like a power ranking or anything. This is just, if you never played some of these specs before, kind of where I'd put them on a list in terms of learning them for the first time, or if you're picking up a new alt, just kind of what you can expect going into that specialization. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I also have some socials in the description of the video if you guys want to consider supporting the channel. Please check those out. Also, just a like or a comment will do just as much. Thank you guys for watching. See you on the next one.